and welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend, guru, coach, mentor, tormentor, John Opalewski. How are you today, John?
Jim, I'm doing wonderful. It's good to be with you recording today.
Yeah, same here. I'm excited about today's thoughts that we're going to discuss. I really think this is going to be challenging for some, and it should be. It should challenge specific mindsets that are destructive to people and not constructive to the kingdom long term. We have experienced, I can't tell you how many in the recent past, right? The large church pastor, the successful, the household name, just really stumbling horribly.
Yes.
This today, I think, really holds to a great extent the cure for that problem. Would you tell us about today and get us started this morning?
Yeah, so I'd like us to converse today, Jim, about reimagining success. I don't know that we're going to fully plumb the depths of this, in 15 minutes today, but I'd like to get the thoughts, the conversation started in our thinking. Last week in Pod 79, we talked about the inherent dangers that often come along with being successful.
Yeah.
And today, what I'd like us to talk about is what success is and isn't.
Yes.
And why understanding the difference between those two things matters so much. Jim, most leaders have this innate drive, right, to be successful, whatever that is, right? The challenge is, what is success? And in many ways, how we define, I think this is true, how we define success defines us.
Yeah.
It defines our choices, our priorities, our relationships. Our teammate Jamie Halavin contributed some of this research of what we're going to talk about today. So I want to just tip my cap to her for helping us. And in her research, Jamie tells the story, and I think you'll appreciate this, Jim, of an organization that she became acquainted with that focused on mentorship of young people in urban areas.
Yes.
A wonderful ministry.
Yeah.
And she said, the organization wasn't flashy. It didn't have the latest and greatest technology. Social media was kind of like this, not super great. And even the buses that they used to pick up kids and bring to the program on Saturday were old. And I mean, they still were safe, but they were, they'd been around forever. And her first thought when she saw all of this was, man, if they just modernized, they could be even more successful. But then she started to meet some of the generations from this ministry, right? Children who are now adults who were first transported by those same school buses in the early days. And they are now the leaders of the program, and the trajectory of their lives and families' lives were forever changed by this non-flashy, basic nuts and bolts approach to reaching out and mentoring young kids.
Yeah.
And just an amazing story, right?
Well, it's absolutely true, right? I mean, Jesus, his PowerPoint presentations were terrible. The Apostle Paul had to write things in such large print because he, evidently couldn't see it or something. I mean, our techniques. I think they're great vehicles to bring the gospel in.
Yeah.
But it's if it was something more than that, Jesus probably would have said, "I wrote a book and I want you to read it." But he did. He said, "Follow me, and I will make you." Finish the sentence. Whatever, the fishers of men, but more than, I will make you a husband. I will make you. I don't know which one of my teachers was the smartest. I know which one cared about me.
Yeah.
My favorite teacher is not my favorite teacher because they had more degrees than a thermometer. My favorite teacher is my favorite teacher because they connected with me. They saw something in me. They brought it out of me. They challenged me. So it is always going to be, right? It's never a program. It's always a person.
Yep. I'll never forget Sister Josita in sixth grade.
It sounds like a comedy sketch.
No, I mean, she changed my life, So in fifth grade, and I'm going off script here a little bit, but oh well. So in fifth grade, I was such a knucklehead as a young kid that I had to report to the principal every day about my activities during recess.
Wow.
I had to give her a full account of what I did because I was in so much trouble. And God love her, but she would tell me things like, "You're a horrible person. You're a terrible kid." Things like, and I believed her. I was in fifth
I
grade.
believed her.
And then Sister Josita comes along,
Yeah.
puts her arm around me and says, "You know, I think you're a good kid." And I'll never forget her. I will never forget that there was this little 4'8" nun in a habit who put her arm around me and saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. So it's absolutely true.
Absolutely true.
Success. That, I mean, she was a successful teacher in my mind. So Jim, I'd like us to talk about this today. And sorry for the detour there, but I just thought it would be good to bring that to bear. Now, before COVID hit, we had metrics in churches that went something like this. It was, butts in seats, right? Finances, buildings, how many people are serving, how many people are in small groups, and I mean, you name it, right?
Right.
And COVID comes and just like almost instantaneously flips everything.
Right.
And, so I'm not saying that any of those things don't matter, but are those the only things that measure success? And I just wonder, I want to hear your thoughts on that, Jim.
Well, it's funny because even when COVID hit, then we all kind of went to video and live stream and YouTube and so forth. And especially on Facebook Live, we said, man, our church exploded. We went from 25 people to 2,500. We have 2,500 views. It's like, the old adage that figures lie and liars figure. Like it didn't explode. Someone's scrolling up their page. They stopped to look, and that was not a legitimate view. So even then, numbers today, if anybody said, I know how many people are attached in some way to this church, I don't know how they're doing it. There really is no way to know. So isn't it great of God, though, to just kind of take everything we did, shake it all up, and now all the snow is flying around the globe, and it'll settle in a place. But right now, it has caused a lot of reflection. What's really important. I was with George Barna many years ago, but he said that we measure dollars, attendance, programs, square footage, and then he stopped almost tearfully. He looked at about 6,000 pastors in the room, and he said, Jesus didn't die for any of that. I thought, man, it was a startling moment where I am probably valuing things for my own success that Jesus is not counting. He's not valuing these things the same way.
Right. And I think when we launch into ministry, I remember thinking, I'm going to change the world. I'm going all out for the ministry. And for me as a lead pastor, I thought, if I get to a church of 1,000, then I'll be happy. I'll have arrived. Then my life will take on more meaning. And interestingly enough, I never pastored a church of 1,000. I was part of a church of 1,000, but never pastored a church that large. But I've had several pastors who pastor churches that large who are no more, they're no happier. As a matter of fact, I think in some ways they're less happy than when they were pastoring a church of 150. I don't know, Jim, what do you think about that?
I heard Jack Hayford. It sounds like I'm name dropping. I don't know any of these people, but I was in the room when they were talking. And Jack Hayford said probably 20 years ago, he said, your ministry will never be large enough to satisfy you. It'll only be large enough to destroy you. And you have to be wise enough to know when to be content. And that doesn't mean no more people can be saved here. But if this is too heavy, you have to be humble enough to take half of it and start handing it off. And if you're going to lead well into the future. And every growth goal that we set, that we reached, I can say this, nothing changed. I didn't change. I wasn't more, I wasn't less. And it reminds me of that scene from Cool Runnings where the kid that wants to drive the sled and Coach Blitzer is telling him, and he realized he cheated to win his gold medals. And he says, gold medals, I want to win the gold, coach. He said, a gold medal is a wonderful thing. I never forget. He said, but if you're not enough without it, you will never be enough with it. And so I think stewarding success by giving all of that to the Lord, and not I'm successful because my church now is 100 or 200 or 500 or 5,000 or 50,000. I agree. I know I know people that are happy and unhappy at every size of church. And it's the church that is making them unhappy, but it's not necessarily the church that's ever making them happy. I'm not sure it's designed to make us happy, maybe satisfying on some level, but not, we have to be content with the Lord and his blessings, whatever that is, right? A base amount.
And I've even seen that in the corporate world. I spent 20 years in the corporate world, Jim, and grew in responsibility, grew in income, and not perceptibly happier with.
Yes.
I mean, money doesn't bring you happiness. You buy stuff with money, right? It gives you options, but it doesn't really move the needle much on the level of contentment in your life. And so I think Jesus has some thoughts on that. The Sermon on the Mount, I think, gives us such great insight.
Yeah.
And he starts that sermon with this countercultural list of people that he says are blessed.
Right.
And I just want to read a little section of that, if that's okay. It says, "Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him and he began to teach them. And he said, 'Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth.'" And he just goes on and on and on and on there. And, when we're tracking the success of our organization, of our church, the church we lead, or the ministries we lead, I wonder, does it make sense to try to use this passage from Matthew 5 as part of our guiding thought or guiding principle? What do you think about that, Jim?
Yeah, I think it comes back to, why is it blessed to mourn? That doesn't make any sense. I'm a season of mourning right now, the death of my father. Why? I've asked me, why is this a blessing? I don't get it. And the very fact that I'm having a conversation with Almighty God about it is a blessing. I think in our weakness, when we're poor in spirit, when we're persecuted, when men revile us, say all men are evil against us, when we mourn, it makes us dependent on the one that's utterly dependable in a way that we're not necessarily dependent on him when we're not mourning. When we're at a wedding, we honor God through that, but we're at a funeral, we contemplate God. We need God. I don't say this the wrong way, but if Elvis marries somebody in Vegas at a drive-through window, they're married, without the contemplation of God. But man, when somebody's getting buried, it's everybody's thinking about forever. Everybody.
Yeah. And so I was Jamie kind of did a really nice job, she really did a nice job, kind of explaining these traits, so poorness of spirit is this realization that in our own human capacity, we don't have what it takes
I need
to
God.
lead anything. One of the most important things I learned last year is that I can do absolutely nothing apart from the presence of Jesus in my life. And that's what the poorness of spirit has to do with. So, you're pastoring a significant church in terms of size and impact, and there's so many wonderful things going on, but you can't do that by yourself.
No.
I mean, there's no way, and you can lose sight of that. And now, if I lose sight of that, I think I'm starting to move into unsuccessful territory, even though if you looked at the organization from the outside, you'd say, well, that's successful. It isn't successful if it is, I want to say this the right way. It's not successful if you don't understand that this thing, first of all, doesn't belong to me. And secondly, without the help of Jesus, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
And so I see that the mourning, and you were talking about mourning loss, and that's part of it. And I also think mourning has to do with being grieved over the things that grieve the Lord.
Yeah, sure.
And that's success. Meekness, I love this one. And Jamie defined it this way: refusing to use our power or position in unhealthy ways.
Yeah.
I've seen, and I think we've seen that happen, right? Where that has happened, where people have lorded it over or have used their power to manipulate people and
Yeah.
do some pretty bad things.
Oh yeah. 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 Using their own strength or the authority that God's given them to be other than what Christ would have them to be.
Correct.
It's universal, isn't it? When the parts of me that don't look like Jesus run into the parts of others that don't look like Jesus, there's about to be some sort of a combustible reaction, right? That only mercy can reset. And that comes with that humility, letting God forgive you and passing it on. We should have Jamie on to do a show just on what she learned about the Beatitudes.
Yeah, maybe I'll invite her. She's an introvert. I'm not sure if she'll. I am too, and I do this, but but that would be good.
She can do the puppet version. Hi,
there
my
you
name's
go.
Jamie. Yeah, we could do that.
Yes, but
those that are listening, like I have no idea what they're laughing at. So watch it.
Yeah. So Jim, I feel like for me that I have been influenced in the past by the American culture when it comes to success.
Yeah.
And I think I'm redefining that success is being loved and respected by the people who know me the best.
Yeah, that's great.
Success is when I know I'm weak and it forces me to depend on God. That's success.
Yeah.
Success is when the fruit of the Spirit is enlarging in my life. That's success. And we're not saying that we're satisfied with only reaching 100 people. If the Lord has given us the wherewithal, the gifts, the resources to do more. This isn't a call to be lazy.
Right.
But Jim, I can grow a wonderful ministry, but if my marriage isn't doing very well, what have I really gained? If the relationships, if I succeed at work, in order to succeed at work, if I have to lose at relationships, I don't think I'm successful. Then I might have $1 billion organization, but if everybody around me doesn't want to be around me because I'm such an ogre,
right,
I think I failed.
Yeah. I think it comes back to the two things that we know. We know that we know God measures, and that's that quality and fidelity, good and faithful. Doing the best that we can with what He's given us, trusting Him for the rest that we don't have, and then just being faithful. My pastor in Phoenix used to say, "There's no such thing as a big shot. There's just little shots that kept shooting." Yeah. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. You're just faithful. What's that? Eugene Peterson called it a long obedience in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
That long obedience in the same direction. There are communities that we have people listening right now that if they pastored for 30 years, their ministry could not grow beyond a certain number because that number is all that will drive 20 minutes to get there. Right there. And what's funny is no one's ever going to write a book called Successful Pastoring in the Small Church Dynamic that many will read about because they won't speak at the conferences. They won't. That's right. They won't be that earth shattering, But what percentage of our churches are 100 people or less in attendance? It's like 70%, 75%.
More than that, I think it's 85%.
Yeah. So there aren't a lot of people that are speaking at these seminars, writing these best-selling books that are telling people how to do what most of us are doing. And it can be like, so the ones who do write the books are about explosive growth and 10Xing and how you too can, and I'm not saying that's bad. Those are their stories, but those are fairly unique stories. And so the story that you need to read as a pastor, as a leader in an organization that you're now leading now, it's the words of Jesus. It's not just the words of Rick Warren, who's a wonderful man who wrote a wonderful. It's not just the words of Bill Hybels. It's not just the words. It's the words of Jesus, because Jesus will tell you that when you're weak, you're strong. He'll tell you you're blessed when you're meek. He'll tell you all these things. And man, that is the message we need to hear to be good and faithful.
So I just think a next step for all of us listening today is just to take a minute. Well, no, more than a minute. Take several sets of minutes to adjust the way you and I view success.
Yeah.
Why? To protect us.
Yeah.
To protect us from falling into the danger that growth and momentum present.
Right. And you can take all your ambition that you would have put into becoming a church of 10,000 and put it into your marriage, put it into your kids, put it in the church that God has given you, not the church that you read in a book about. It is, we're not, like you say, we're not talking about laziness. We're not talking about apathy.
Right.
We're talking about building a foundation for success, because if your marriage isn't together and your church explodes in growth, I can tell you what's going to give. It's
Yes.
that foundation. When the weight of God's blessing comes down on a foundation that is not able to sustain it, there will be failure. And
That's
we've
right.
seen way too much of it. So good. Thank you, John. We appreciate this. It's funny. It's brotherly to some of us. It's fatherly to some of us. But the wisdom of today's teaching, I do hope that our listeners, our watchers, will take those minutes and just take a walk and say, am I defining success as Jesus did, who never pastored a church of thousands, although he could have easily done it. He never wrote a book, although it would have been a worldwide bestseller, although all these things, right? He never spoke at a seminar. Let's value what he valued. And I appreciate just that. It's a gentle warning, but it is a warning. And we're grateful for that. Anything you want to say in closing today?
No, just that we love all of you that are listening. And the reason we bring these things to you is because of that. Yeah. We want you to lead better, to lead longer, to enjoy it more, and to have great marriages and have kids that love Jesus, and to have a life outside of your ministry. And so that's it, Jim. Just that's our heart with this. I hope we didn't come across lecturing today, because that wasn't the heart at all. But just to say, we're concerned about this in our own life.
Yes.
We're concerned about it for you. And we hope that somehow there was a nugget or two here today that will get your mind going and thinking in a proper direction.
Right on. Well, as always, John, thank you for your time and your wisdom and this generous gift that is this podcast. It is not, it costs you money. It doesn't cost us money. It costs you time. Doesn't cost our listeners time unless they want to invest it. So it's a generous offer, and we're grateful for you doing it week after week so faithfully. Now 80 times in a row. So God bless you. God bless you, our listeners and watchers. We hope that we will run into you again real soon as we continue to all lead from alignment.